Alright, it's E3, it's Assassin's Creed 4, and we're here with Darby to talk us a little bit about the return of the Kenways. Darby, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
That's a good subtitle.
I think we'll sell that for
Return of the Kenway. Yeah.
Can we tie it into the book or something like that?
Yeah, let's use it somehow.
Okay. Right, okay, can you give us a sort of setup about what you're doing with the project, how you've kicked off?
That's a broad question. I'm the lead writer of this project, so as soon as I came off my work on Revelations, around August of 2011, I started working on this project in tandem with Assassin's Creed 3. I started talking with Corey, the lead writer of Assassin's Creed 3, and we had this idea of doing what we call the Kenway family saga. Edward Kenway doesn't begin this game as an assassin. He plays most of it as a pirate who comes into contact with the assassins and Templars and kind of bounces around this crazy conflict that's been brewing for centuries and centuries. And so we wanted to tell the story of how this family got into this conflict. And it just so happened that when the naval gameplay was coming together with Assassin's Creed 3, we saw all these little links forming, and we said, we got to do the golden age of piracy. It just all makes sense. The age that Edward Kenway would have been, the naval gameplay that's coming together beautifully, the location in the world, this kind of idea of the pirate republic, which was a real thing back in about 1714, 15. These pirates had come to Nassau in the Bahamas to create this little republic apart, well away from the kings and that were ruling Europe at the time. And so it all kind of thematically and the timeline, it all worked together. And so that's how this project started.
I said it's the Kenway family history here, but this is obviously set before Assassin's Creed 4. Assassin's Creed 3. So how have you guys sort of synced that up? I mean, how did that work? Did you guys sort of start developing, like you said, 4 beforehand, almost an idea of, okay, we'll insert, like you said, these little links, these little nods. Yeah, so can people perhaps doing Assassin's Creed 3 now sort of see those links now we know a bit more about this?
Yeah, if you actually pour through some of Assassin's Creed 3 and the novel that came out with it, Forsaken, Edward is actually a character in Forsaken. He occupies about the first 50 pages of the book. There's nods. Hatham mentions his dad in AC3 near the beginning. The database has Edward in it. So yeah, we laid the groundwork fairly early on. There's lots of little things in AC3 that will call back to this game. This being a prequel, the historical part is a prequel. The present day section, of course, it carries on into 2013. So it's one part's going back, the other part's going forward. Don't let that confuse you.
It all ties together in the end.
It does, yeah. And this will be a good game for first timers to get into the series. The Desmond story is over, so we're going to use the present day story in our game to reintroduce some of these conflicts, to make people who maybe are coming into this because they want a pirate game, to reintroduce the Assassin Templar conflict. This is still very much an Assassin's Creed game, but it's set in among pirates. Assassins in our games are cover all walks of life. Sean, if you remember in the present day, he's like a data entry guy, but he's an assassin. And Rebecca is a woman who's good with tech, but she's an assassin. So assassins in our games and Templars cover a broad spectrum. They're more about philosophy than about just stealth gameplay. So pirates, it fits perfectly as well.
You're saying about almost like this is a great place for newcomers to get introduced to the series. So is the present day stuff almost like a fresh start, fresh like a paint?
It's a fresh start in terms of how we approach it. The character is now you rather than a mediating character. So we got rid of that Desmond layer between the ancestor and you. But it's not a fresh start. We're not rebooting the franchise. The story continues a year after it left off, right? So 2012 was when all these timelines converged. The present day, you purchased Assassin's Creed 3 in 2012. The story was set in 2012. Now we're jumping forward to 2013. The present in our game is set in 2013, basically when you're playing it, concurrently with when you're playing it. So from the standpoint of gameplay and the character and the characters you'll meet, a lot of it is new and fresh, but the storyline that's boiling underneath it is still is ongoing. So you'll see familiar faces, you'll hear familiar names, you'll feel that conflict. Abstergo still exists and all these kinds of things. So it's a bit of a half and half, and so we're hoping that new players don't feel lost, and old players feel satisfied with the amount of content they're getting.
Now, golden age of piracy. Assassin's Creed has also had that wonderful thing of threading between fiction and reality and stuff like that. How have you steered yourself through Assassin's Creed 4 and covering this particular time period?
Well, when I first started doing research for this, the first obvious thing to do is pick out people from history you find interesting. Which men and women are going to star in this game? Which big historical events are going to star in this game? And we kind of compile a big list of of all this. But of course, we have our own story to tell, our fictional story, mixed in with a bit of science fiction and history. I actually like to think of it for the modern audiences. I feel like Assassin's Creed is kind of almost the new Doctor Who, in a way that it blends science fiction and history, rationality over magic, these kinds of things, a constantly replenishing main character, or rejuvenating or regenerating main character. We have all those similar elements, and so we're telling our own story, but we bring history to bear. We play with it in such a way that it hopefully fits naturally. We don't want to go the Forrest Gump route where we feel like we're popping up at every possible juncture, but it's a bit of a challenge. But ultimately, we're telling our own story, and this story is about Edward. It's not about just here's a couple historical moments and then a loose thread. It really is a story about this guy. And I always try to, for me personally, I try to make sure that the science fiction elements don't overshadow the characters and the history. The science fiction elements are there to add a little spice or flavor or weird twists, but they're never, hopefully it never overshadows the meat of the story, which is just people, good characters.
Well, with that in mind then, Assassin's Creed has also sort of touched upon mythical objects that has always been the sort of MacGuffin of that particular story. In that regard then, is there one particular object here, or like you said, is it more about just the characters and his sort of relationship with the piracy?
Yeah, what we've set up in the past, we definitely like to go take mysteries and locations and objects and fodder for conspiracy theorists. We love taking that and putting our own twist on it. So this game will be no different. Yeah, we have a bunch of that in this game, but I'm not gonna spoil too much of that because that's always the fun. But again, yeah, it's still about the characters. I would never want to write a game or any kind of story where let's say if it was like like in Indiana Jones, the Ark of the Covenant was never the focus of the character development. It was the kind of the MacGuffin that everyone was kind of looking for, but the real character development was in Indiana Jones himself, right? And in our stories, it's no different. But I'm not going to give too much away for Edward because that would just ruin everyone's day.
Okay, well, guess we'll have to wait until it's released then. Can you sort of talk about, is there any particular character arcs in the game you've been writing that you've enjoyed the most personally for you, have been the most rewarding?
On this game or in the past?
In this game.
Okay. Edward's is definitely a unique journey. We've revealed some of the main characters. I do think I love the way that I love Benjamin Hornigold's character arc in this game. He's a very complex character. The character Charles Vane is a real bastard, and we got to have a fantastic actor playing him that I'm excited for everyone to see. He's one of those great characters that he almost doesn't change throughout, but you love his personality. He's a bit of a hurricane, and he adds the proceedings where things might be going the way you want them to, and then Charles Vane comes along and complicates the situation. So he's a great character. I'm actually very, very happy with all the characters in this, and I can't wait for people to see them. I worked really hard this time to pick just the right number of characters so that we see enough of them. We spend a lot of time with all of them, but we still have a big cast. That's always the balance, I think, is that you want somewhere in the range of, I don't know, for a good game, you want somewhere in the range of 10 great characters so that you spend enough time with all of them, but you feel that it's a broad enough cast to make you feel like you're meeting enough people, if that makes sense. I
get exactly what you mean. Well, with Assassin's Creed 3, I think a lot of people took to hate them. really over Connor. Actually, it's quite interesting. With this kind of way, I mean, how have you approached that? I mean, have you guys taken that sort of on board, maybe with twisting the character, or does that almost come from the piracy angle? It's almost automatic. This guy's going to be a bit more of a rogue, a bit more personality.
I think people, when after they play AC4, they will understand a bit of Haytham's kind of charismatic, almost sinister quality to Haytham. You know, he can be a gentleman and then turn on a dime. And, you know, he has that great line, and now I'm going to feed you your teeth, that kind of, you know, so he could immediately transition into this brutal sort of killer. I think that I took some of that and put it into Edward, because if you've read the book Forsaken, Haytham was raised by his father for a time, and I'm not going to spoil that for people who haven't read that book, but they were very close, Haytham and Edward. So there is a lot of Edward transferred to Haytham. Connor grew up, of course, very differently. He grew up with his mother, and so there's a huge difference in personality between that. But there's almost, even in Connor, there's a bit of a brashness that comes through. So it very much is a family, and I think you'll see a kind of a through line with this family. So.
Whereas Connor comes across as more intense, most of the time Haytham comes across as more of a sort of enjoyable, sort of funny guy. Would he lean towards that?
Yeah. He definitely has a sense of humor, a sense of playfulness. As a pirate, he's very much into. He drinks a lot.
Who doesn't these days?
There's a Woodes Rogers quote that we published on our Tumblr account recently. That's sailors definitely have a preference for rum over clothing. If you were presented with pants or a bottle of rum, or a keg of rum, I should say, they'd probably go for the rum and leave the pants till later. So there's definitely a playful side to him, and there's a because a lot of pirates they got caught in this weird loop that I think a lot of gamers would recognize, where you get your money. You have dreams of, like, I'm going to get my money and then I'm going to go, you know, put it into a retirement account. But as soon as you get that money, you just spend it on, you know, all the pleasant. You spend it on games or rum or women or you know, just you just blow it all like a weekend in Vegas. And then they would have to go do that again. So there's this grinding aspect to actual pirates that really existed. Very few pirates retired with any kind of money at all. They would just get it, spend it, get it, spend it, get it, spend it. And that sounds a lot like games that we play. So in that sense, the pirate thing actually works very well for games. You don't have to stretch to make this gameplay loop.
Well, talking about that, trying to sort of break that cycle, obviously that's very important for us as gamers as well as pirates. But given that you're trying to write an arc for a character that perhaps has already been touched upon, like you said, with a tie-in book and everything like that, is there a sense that you're trying to connect those dots that already exist, or do you feel like you still have a completely blank page on which to write this arc?
Yeah, I have a blank page simply because I was involved in all the planning of all those things. So a lot of details from AC3, I would talk with the writers from that. When the book was being written, I was in consultation with how we wanted to navigate the latter part of his life, because, of course, Forsaken, that book takes place after our game. So I was in consultation for that. So all these details were actually, you know, I helped create. So I wasn't worried about that. There's always, like, little things that after the book comes out that I'm like, oh, I wish I could have, wish I could have given him a scar over across his face. You know, I don't know. Little details, but like, players can rest assured that, like, we work very hard to make the continuity as seamless and solid as possible. So.
And sort of wrapping up then, I mean, are you finished the character? Where are you in terms of the game? I mean, is that you've written the last bit of dialogue for it? Is there anything else maybe perhaps you said you might be thinking about, maybe I should change that or whatnot?
You mean where I am right now? Like, the script is done. I'm done with that. And we've, you know, shot all the scenes, and we're just building it now and putting it together. So it's time for me to write database entries. But no, I'm really happy with where it's ended up. The game's looking great, but I'm now in, like, sell mode. Like, I want to convince the rest of the world that it's an amazing game. So Was that your question? Or?
That was sort of it. Whether you're happy leaving him.
Yes, I'm happy where he is right now, and now it's up to people with far more technical skill than I have to actually bring it to life. So,
obviously, you've created the core of the character, so very much look forward to seeing it. And thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, see you all. Thank you.
As long as empires generate wealth and riches, we will be there to bleed them dry.